Strong enough. Hey, Alex. Nice to see you this week.
Hey everyone, we're letting people join in. They're all still joining.
Ooh, page two. Who we got over here?
Hey, Mary.
Kristen, Zach,
Hey,
me,
guys.
Ricardo. We got two pages.
Whoa.
Hey, Dad.
I love that. You're so
I mean, I don't know how you got on the first page, but I went to the second page. You weren't there either. Welcome, Margaret.
we're, just,
Yo,
we're
happy
gonna give it
right now.
a few minutes. There's some people joining on still. As many of them as they come in. So we'll just give it a few minutes.
I'm sure I stopped talking. I said I'm happy everybody's here. Can I not be?
No, you can't.
Stop. Why is your voice so tiny? Actually, I'm gonna.
To join our episode 1. Sorry, I'm gonna mute everyone because there's some background. So if you're not muted, if you can back or mute yourself. But there were some people who couldn't join episode 1. Some of you had scheduling conflicts but reached out and got the recorded session. I know Cedric is streaming this live, which is exciting. So we have people joining from all over. So first, just I want to give you a background about the Cebrin Goodman Teen Institute and Operation Snowball for those of you who don't know and are joining us from outside of Illinois. We are youth leadership programs that empower youth with knowledge, skills, and confidence to lead an alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free life. We make this a reality by helping teens develop and strengthen their leadership skills and teach them to be catalysts for change in their school and community. This session, Better Together, came from a conversation about how our programs can and we must do more. And we just started with let's do one, let's do two, let's see what happens. And we committed to 4, and now we are finding that this could go much longer, and we want to continue the conversation. And every time we develop an agenda or a schedule, we decide let's add another one. So we hope that you're in with us for the next few Wednesdays, and we just thank you for being part of the conversation and for being part of the change. And so I will introduce our speakers for tonight. We have Cedric and Isaiah. They were here last week, and then Brandon. He will be joining us tonight. So I will turn the floor over to them, and thank you again for all being here.
I'll start us off, Isaiah. I just want to remind everyone that we are not experts on the topics we're about to talk about, but what we are people who have experienced the things that we are going to talk about. We have invited Brandon to this experience because Brandon's not me. Brandon's not Isaiah. Brandon is Brandon, and Brandon has a life and years and thoughts and feelings and emotions that I talked about for myself last week, and Isaiah had the opportunity to talk about himself last week. So in being better together, the first step is to understand each other. We got to know me last week. We got to know Isaiah last week. We're going to get to know Brandon last week. And the reason Brandon is here is because today's episode is about what has been seen currently, what has been seen presently. Sorry. So last week, we asked you guys to watch a very tough video. We taught you breathing exercises to get you through that. We expected questions, but we got none, which means that there is more to learn, more to expand on, which is exciting. It seems that we're speaking clearly and being understood. If at any point in this video, I'm opening in the chat now because I didn't last week. See that now. Hey, friends who've already said stuff in the chat. Hi. Gretchen, what's up, girl? Please, we want you guys to ask questions there. Don't wait till the end if you have to leave at any point. We want to make sure that everyone has the information that they need from us in this conversation, which is what we want to keep it. If you're watching from Orlando Strong, please leave comments there also. If you have questions that you do not want to post, please ask them anyway. Reach out to the CGTI Facebook or Instagram and ask those questions there. If you have a question, there's no such thing as a silly question. Somebody else might also have that question. You can remain anonymous, and we are looking forward to answering your question. If everybody has the same question, we can steer a conversation towards that question and make it a full topic. But as you guys have hopefully seen, the video that we asked you guys to watch last week shows a good synopsis and kind of montage of what has been happening since April and June going into July. So what you have seen after last week's education, fast forward to 2020, the Black Lives Matter movement, the justice system, and how it has fueled the Black Lives Matter movement. Some very charging situations and times leading up to what we will be talking about today. Isaiah, I want to give you the opportunity to intro as well before we get into today's topics. So take the floor.
Yeah. That video was definitely hard to watch. Know that I was had goosebumps during the entire video. I think it was really important that we saw all those things and aren't shying away from talking about things that are happening in the world today. And that's why we're here, is so that we can all learn together and grow together and hopefully be better together. So I did want to start off by giving the floor to Brandon if he would like to introduce himself for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Brandon Moran. I'm currently a volunteer for Operation Snowball and CGTI. I am a biracial, so mix of black and white, and gay. So growing up was a fun time, to say the least. But yeah, I'm here today. I want to share my experiences with all of you so we can learn and grow and do all fun things in life.
Love that. Thank you so much, Brandon, for being here, for volunteering to be open and transparent. It is not an easy thing to do, but these times and these conversations call for it. So Isaiah and I had watched that video, and it currently today was made right around the time when things started changing in the Black Lives Matter movement, which, as you can see behind me, there was a certain group that during the injustice of the Black Lives Matter movement was losing rights before our own eyes. And I personally have had the opportunity, when we talk about protesting, I will get more into it, to stand next to a lot of them. And to my surprise, they have had my back like I've had their back in the past. And so during Pride Month, we watch on a world scale gay rights being stripped away at the government level. And so outside of the video that we watched, we have been able to see through the media this happened. And so I have a lot of LGBT plus friends and have had many conversations, but I have never been able to put myself in their shoes, other than the similarities of oppression and bullying and losing friends to suicide and just feeling like you don't matter. And so looking over the leadership of CGTI, Brandon and myself and Isaiah and Jalen and sorry, y'all, I have 1,000 things on my mind. Tessa, sorry, are all activity coordinators at camp. And so I've had the lovely opportunity to get to know these individuals on a personal level more recently, being a part of leadership. And so he was the first person that came to mind when it came to talking about this. Now, again, me and Brandon know each other on a personal level. So I, in my mind, just thought it made sense to call on him to speak freely. And so I'm expressing how super grateful I am to allow him to take the platform alongside me and speak on this during the Black Lives Matter movement and explain to you guys just his perspective, because perspective is so important. You guys got to hear mine and Isaiah's. You got to hear mine more so. Isaiah will be speaking on his during this episode, and I will be combining the 100% Black compared to the mixed race Black experience and letting you guys know the perspective of how we look at each other. And so, Brandon, this past month has been tough for Black people. And we are seeing that is only getting tough for Black people, for people of color who are also LGBT plus. And moving forward and being better together, we want to get the perspectives of Black people, to get the perspectives of people of color, and the perspectives of all Black lives mattering before we all gain information and knowledge to move forward with. And so we would love to just hear what you would like to share with this whole movement and your feelings.
Yeah. So yeah, this last month has been hard. I think with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's so powerful, and there's so many different aspects to it that I think initially, like, yeah, it's been around for a while, but obviously it's been taking much more prominence as of late. But I think growing up, I kind of saw myself as like not Black, you know. As you stated last week in the call, that you had a lot of white friends, like you pretty much like were raised white. I was raised by a white family essentially, and I did have, like, my dad's side of the family who was Black, but I didn't see them all that often as I would have liked to. But growing up with like that mindset, and kind of think like, oh, like nothing could ever happen to me. But then there are times over the years where it's not blatant, but it's more microaggressions or just kind of like looks I get from people sometimes, where I'm made to feel uncomfortable. But that's like one realm of it. And then with also like being gay, that's like another whole thing. But for in terms of like my Black side, I guess you can say, it was difficult to navigate, and it still is. I'm still trying to like figure it out. But yeah, it's been a weird time for me personally, because I'm trying to be as active and as trying to have a voice, but I think I'm still trying to find my voice within this movement. I think that's what's like hard, but yeah, we're getting there slowly but surely. We're getting there.
Absolutely. Isaiah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I have similar experiences as Brandon with, being raised by my mom and seeing growing up in like a white suburb. So I'm very similar to Brandon in that sort of sense of, I mean, there were times when I was told that I'm not Black enough, or things like that, and we can touch on that a little bit later. But I did want to give Brandon as much time as possible. I did want to ask Brandon, what was it like for you growing up being Black and queer? Like, how do those two identities intersect?
Yeah, so like I stated, growing up Black, like I was trying to kind of figure myself out. I'm like, well, I look different from the rest of my family, when most of my family is white. But I'm like, my skin's a little bit darker. And then growing up, I had people call me Oreo, which it's white or Black on the, no, that's wrong.
It's the golden Oreo.
Yeah. So yeah, Black. Yeah, so I guess just Oreo, but
yeah, you're
like Black on the outside, white on the inside, basically. Yeah. So white acting, but Black.
You speak proper.
Right. So getting called that a lot, or it's like, oh well, or people ask me ever since probably kindergarten. It's like, oh, like what are you like? And I'll say, oh, like a Black and white. Oh, I thought you were like Mexican or like something else that's like not me. And I'm like, oh no, like I'm Black and white, And then initially, I'm like, oh, like I'm like, okay, like I don't think anything of it. But when it's people are asking me like all the time, like throughout the years, which is fine. I don't mind clarifying, but it's kind of the way certain people will ask it. They're like, what are you like? I had one girl who I met at a former internship, and she's like, one of the first things she says to me, she's like, what are you? Like what's like your skin color? And I'm like, I'm Black and white. She goes, oh, okay. And it's like, okay. I'm like, what does it matter anyway? Like, thank you for asking. But yeah, growing up in that sense was weird. And then, around probably maybe like 7 or 8 years old, I started thinking, I'm like, I'm a little bit different, but not like skin wise, like more like mentally. I'm like, I'm different, but I don't know what I am. So I'm just going to put it on the back burner. And then kind of starting like in late middle school, early high school, I started thinking about like, oh, like, and I started figuring out like what gay was and all that other stuff. And I didn't fully come to realization with it until probably junior, senior year of high school. And then I finally was like, okay, like this is what I am, like cool. But trying to, I think it was like too much for me. Like there was too many identities. I'm like, okay, well, I can be gay, but like I can't be black, or like I can be black, but I can't be gay. And like that's kind of like how like my mind was working. It's like you can only be one or the other. But then as I've grown up and lived experiences and things like that, I've learned that you can be both and you can be great. So that's kind of my experience with growing up with both of those things in a nutshell. But yeah, it was not easy trying to figure all that out for sure.
Yeah. Sounds like you had like all these different identities that are all kind of like clashing together at the same time and trying to figure out what all of it means, all at a difficult time in your life. So thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable with us.
Isaiah, you want to go ahead into how you also probably had to deal with a lot of the same things?
Yeah. So I did grow up. I lived with my mom, visited my dad when it was, when I could or when it was convenient. And so I did grow up predominantly white. I'm If I don't go out in the sunlight for a week or so, you almost can't tell I'm even black.
It shows.
I lose my melanin real quick. But so I did actually grow up a class of mostly Japanese people. I was in like a dual language program, so I was navigating, what does it mean to be mixed at home and then going to school and learning a whole different culture. Those all sorts of confusion for me growing up. But I remember it. I remember whenever I'd go to my dad's house is when I actually noticed it more. Is that I could tell that a lot of my cousins who are full black people I didn't have some of those same experiences as them. I didn't talk the same way that they did. I didn't act the same way that they did. So I was being, kind of othered even with my own family. My own family called me powder growing up for the longest time because I was so white. So I've dealt with a lot of times people not considering me to be a black person, or people telling me that I don't act black enough or I'm not black enough. When I was in college, there was a black male on our staff in our resident hall that got fired, and he was having, issues with the fact that he got fired. And he was like, "There's no other black males on staff," and I was on the staff, and my director told me, he was like, "Yeah, he said this, but like you're on staff," and he even like called him out for it. And he's like, "Oh, he's not black though," and I was like, what does that mean? Like, is my dad being black like not good enough for people? I've felt that a lot in my life of just having this identity told that I at times can't identify as a black man because I am light skinned. I don't talk a certain way. I don't act a certain way. So it's been weird for me growing up, even like times participating in that identity of myself because of the way that I'm perceived.
And this is what you were referring to last week when you said white passing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, because of my skin color and white passing, really the only things that I look like my dad in are like my nose, my hair, and my lips. And if I shave my beard, then that gets even harder to tell at times. So I think there is sort of this like distinction that gets made within the Black community of light skins versus dark skinned people. And for a lot of times, um, light skinned people are excluded from Black culture um, because, to an extent, I do experience white privilege.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, I don't have to deal with as many of the like places of fear that a full Black male would experience, because if you only are seeing me from the side or only take a quick view of me, I'm not, almost sucks to say this, but I'm not dark enough to be seen as a threat. And that's just the reality of it. With something like white privilege, it's a difficult thing to navigate. And I did want to just touch on what white privilege is a little bit and what it is for me. For me, white privilege is I'm not as fearful in my everyday life of going out and doing my everyday activities. And my life isn't really harder because of the color of my skin. That's really the ways that I personally experience white privilege. Things like going out and jogging and running, and being in a upscale neighborhood. Like, I don't get stopped, or I don't get even a second glance a lot of times, even though we've seen people that were just jogging and getting shot by the police for it. With in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, or if you're in a store that's up class or whatever, police or security don't follow me around. I don't experience things like that. So there's a lot that I don't experience within the Black community that someone like Cedric would, because of the color of his skin, because I'm lighter than he is. So it's a very almost split within our own community that we have.
Oh yeah, and let's talk about that split. But I just want to say, on behalf of Black Lives Matter, on behalf of dark skins, everything I said last week, Brandon, Isaiah, I apologize for our people treating our people this way. We all don't see it that way, and it could be taken as a majority of the Black community seeing it this way. But we talked about a lot of dates last week, and let's just get to the education in it. And this isn't the professor education. This is 30 plus years of Cedric being on this earth and being a part of it and adding to it. And I've never added to it out of hate. I've always added to it out of a lack of understanding. But we're seeing presently in today that very large groups of different minded people are coming together more than, if not as much, the hate groups. And so this movement, all Black Lives Matter, meaning Black, trans, light skin, LGBT plus, we're better together in this movement because we have unified from within. Doesn't mean you're not going to see Black people being mean to Black people, that some Black people are stuck in their ways. We're not focused on any of that right now. And so growing up myself, my mom is light skinned. She is not as light as Isaiah is, but she does not look like me by skin. My sister is light skin, my older sister, and my little sister is my color. My dad is my color. So, um, down to your hair, like we talked about last week with, we touched on it with getting jobs and everything. Um, Systematically, Black people have been made to hate certain Black people. There's a time during slavery where there were house slaves and there were outside slaves. And because of that, there was a resentment that began. The house slaves got more privileges than the Black slaves. It continued to fuel the hatred for the Blacks, but slave owners would have children with slaves that would create the light skinned community. And so the resentment started there because slaves hated their owners, and a child who is from slave and from slave owner, there is that hatred towards that side. So it transcends all the way to today when it might feel like anyone who is light skinned would have more opportunities than anyone who is dark skinned like me, and that white passing privilege that Isaiah was talking about earlier. So imagine, in a situation where I'm in a car and Isaiah is in a car, an officer sees Isaiah, he might give him a pass. But because light-skinned people are less likely to commit crimes or whatever the statistic is, I'm more likely to get racially profiled. And so, um, down to job opportunities. Isaiah, your story about um, the gentleman being the only Black person on staff, not seeing you as Black, is super disrespectful, um, and anybody could see that. And so you're not the only person who deals with things like that. The discrimination against you from your own people. And Brendan, your story about being that Oreo, we are all different bags of Oreos. We're not just the dark chocolate on the outside, cream on the inside Oreos anymore. There's so many different flavors, and so we've all lived that. We've all spent years being ridiculed in the way we speak, the way we dress. You're not, culturally fitting in and not being accepted, which is the second part of this episode. And so it takes us accepting ourselves before we can fully trust and believe that anybody else is going to accept us. It takes um I could remember like more recently, um the trend being like things light skinned people do, and it was just like this bullying, like dehumanitizing the struggle of a Black person, where like the dark skinned people have to live a harder life, and because light skinned people are white passing, they have it easier, and therefore there are certain things that light skinned people do that Black people don't do. And so it was just continuing to divide us from within, and down to the texture of mixed hair and like being able to wear it freely at work, and um just that resentment in itself. um Light skinned people getting more jobs, or having different names, um that, if seen on a resume, would give them a job, that continues to have more resentment. And you have, what we'll talk about in the next episode, Black women feeling separated from lighter skinned women, um, and just the resentment there. In the same token, you have Black people who don't accept gay people, who in Black culture, it is more likely that if you come out as gay or lesbian, your family will disown you. It is, frowned upon and looked at as negative and weak, and that is not true at all about LGBT plus people. If anything, from my experience being in having relationships with these people, they are so much more energized than any other group of people that I've ever seen. So much more stronger than any group of people that I've ever seen. I moved to Orlando in 2009, and I've never seen a stronger community of people for, Pulse to happen when it did, for our city to come together and just literally be that rainbow in a dark cloud. To understand pride, like, you really would have to see it as loud as I had the opportunity to in my community. And so they're people just like us who want, their own rights, um, and deserve them. And to see currently, presently, and like all throughout my time here in Orlando, it just is like a magnifying glass of just um, seeing it for yourself, but understanding it from a Black perspective of 401 years of oppression. It doesn't take, a Black person long to see something similar happening to another group of people. For, you know, what is being seen presently, I have seen um, people argue, whether it be on Facebook and social media or in the news or in articles, that we're not out here standing together um, with, trans lives, or the chant start that Black trans lives matter, and other Black people decide that's not why they're out there. And how hurtful and hard that must be to feel like, for once, this felt different for myself, but to take that away from somebody else standing next to me, how sad that is, and just how draining and just emotionally backward this forward moving movement is. Like, no, we cannot do that to our own people anymore. We are already feeling oppressed, and we just need to realize that we're all in the same fight. Whether you're, a Black woman feeling feelings towards other Black women, or a Black man feeling feelings towards another Black man, or you don't understand trans lives or LGBT plus lives, and it's just, you need to educate yourself on these topics and get to know some of these people. Whether you need to do that or not, what's wrong is what's wrong, and we're all standing together in solidarity for Black lives. But there needs to be an understanding that if you don't agree, this is not the time to fight that, especially if you're a Black person feeling like you're oppressed while trying to oppress someone else. And I felt the need to address this within the community, because it's so sad and disheartening to be standing with allies and have, the curtain pulled back, and to see the ugly side of injustice within ourselves. It's just like inviting people over and your house is not clean. It's like, you want to make sure, your bed is made and your floor is vacuumed before you invite anyone over. And so we're inviting people into this fight with us, but we need to vacuum the floor and let the people who are coming over know that, no, this is not the way we feel about these things.
Right.
We do believe and we do stand with all Black lives.
Yeah.
And
I think you called it when we were talking about this earlier, sort of like a second wave, and a second the next step for the Black Lives Matter movement. You started saying all Black Lives Matter. And I think that's really, really important. I think that's what you've been trying to convey, is that
absolutely,
if you are someone who identifies as part of the Black community, your life matters.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if you're part of the LGBT community. It doesn't matter if you're light skinned, dark skinned, if you're a woman of color. All of our lives matter. All of us collectively, Black lives matter. All Black lives matter.
Absolutely.
We did get some questions in the chat that I wanted to address. The first one is from Dan. Thank you for this question. And I think it's an interesting one. I'm going to ask Brandon first. When you were younger, did you ever wish you were fully white or fully Black to fit in more? And if so, is there a specific instance that changed your mindset for you to accept yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was younger, I definitely wanted to be fully white. I wanted to, look like my family. I wanted to bleach my skin so I could match everybody because I just felt very much on the outside. But then I don't think there was a specific instance that like caused me to like accept myself as I am. I think it was more just kind of learning over the years that like, yeah, like I'm who I am, and that's really all that matters. I shouldn't have to want to bleach my skin to look like my family. Like they're gonna love me no matter what skin color I am, hopefully. But yeah, no, I don't think there was a specific instance that changed my mind. But yeah, it's still something that I kind of struggle with today, and that I know probably, I don't know, Isaiah, if you identify with this, but that mixed race people, like sometimes like, I don't know, I've had the thought in my mind, like if I could just be white or if I can just be Black, then my life would just be easier and not both. I definitely had those thoughts come across my mind for sure.
Yeah, I definitely had those thoughts as well. Honestly, I think for me, I wanted to be fully Black more, fit in with my dad's side of the family when I'd see them, because it was such a like surreal experience for me. I wasn't around them very often, so there was a lot of times that I would go over to my aunt and uncle's house, um, and I would be like, well, who do I like play with? And eventually I would settle in and like start hanging out with my cousins, and it was all love after 5-10 minutes. But when I showed up initially, um, I was so used to being around white people or around um, the people in my classroom, so a lot of Japanese people, that I kind of had like the inverse that a lot of other people feel is like, oh, I'm the only white person in the room. And that was kind of that surreal experience for me, I dealt with. But the moment that, my cousins came over and started hugging me, I realized like, we're all just family. Like, I'm gonna go and play with my cousin Lexi and my cousin Keon, and we're all cool now. But I did have moments that, yeah, I wished I could fit in with my family a little bit more. And honestly, it just came over time, with accepting that this is who I am. I think it was hard when I was younger. I'll kind of answer the question that DeMarco asked: is what advice would you share with with school-aged people? I think the real thing for me that changed my mindset was, I stopped letting people talk about my white side and my Black side. Um, don't really, don't really don't like those comments a whole lot of, oh, this is your Black side that just came out, or this is your white side that just came out. I kind of stopped entertaining those because um, all of me is my Black side. All of me is my white side. This is who I am. I am simultaneously both of those things. So to school-aged mixed youth, just be unapologetically who you are. Don't let anyone tell you that your white side's coming out too much or your Black side's coming out too much. Let them know that all of me is coming out too much.
Absolutely.
Wow, guys,
we
thank
are,
you
and we're not
guys
going to change.
ever. Thank you guys for that transparency. If I could just, spend the next couple of moments. Laura, I do see your question. We're going to talk about what's being seen presently in acceptance today. You asked, can you talk about what it means to move from being not a racist to anti-racist? We're going to talk about advocating. We're going to talk about protest. We're going to talk about
Being an ally.
being an ally. We have a whole episode where we want to take all this information that we're laying on you guys as far as perspectives go and give you a full opportunity to understand what to do with all of that from our perspective after we've just told you that. But we definitely want you to feel like that question will be answered, if not today. If I could just piggyback off of what you guys have been talking about, something's been on my chest for a while. I want to address the two societies outside of mixed race within the Black community. A lot of people have certain friends who they could look at and say things like, you talk white, you don't dress like this other person, you don't do these things, your pants don't sag and whatnot. You're not Black. And so you listen to country music, you listen to rock music, you're not Black. And so those people, much like myself, are looked at lesser by another group of people. And in the Black community, I feel like in any community, there are varying types of people, varying degrees of culture. And so while talking about acceptance, while talking about internally accepting, sorry, Elle, while talking about internally accepting people outside of what we might look like, let's think of words like this, but not use words like this. Redneck, ghetto, these are just words that come to mind, but I was speaking on this earlier, but when with Dan's question, or DeMarco's, struggling with identity and placement with their race or within their race, we now need to move forward together, destroying these labels that we put on people. And even if they don't have a word to be called, I've seen videos where someone refers to certain Black people as ghetto Black people and then like educated Black people. We're just Black, and rednecks or whatever blue or white collar, we're just white people. And so in order for us to move forward as a society, we have to stop looking at, because like you think of a topic like Black on Black crime, where does that stem from? I feel like a lot of people don't know that, but just to like say it quickly before wrapping up, you have to think going back to the slave mentality of how slaves and outside slaves, light skins and dark slaves, and light skins and dark skins. And when we talk about school zoning in episode 4, think about placement and finance. You have well-off Black people, and you have Black people who have to struggle. And so there's always going to be oil and water mix of trying to unify, while at the same time feeling oppressed, and if not feeling oppressed, flaunting, I believe, is a term we could use. And so If anybody is in a better position than you, you're going to feel jealous. And if anybody is in a lesser position than you're going to feel like you have something that somebody doesn't. And so these labels, these stereotypes, they must end. And I'm speaking to Black people listening to this. We have to accept each other. I'm speaking to white people who are my allies. I've had conversations where it looks a certain way if a white person is fighting too hard for black people, or it's upsetting that you have to have conversations with your parents or your relatives and you feel like they're racist because of, maybe they're, more well off or whatever it is, who they, voted for president and whatnot. And so in understanding each other, being better together, we have to get to the heart of our internal problems. Not that we're focusing on it, but just this all is about understanding each other. And whether you're Black and you're needing to put more energy into helping to understand other Black people, whether you're white and you're looking to understand why these people feel a certain way or not wanting to label them a certain way. Before you judge moving forward from this conversation, spend a lot of time accepting, because I know that was something that I had to do. I've never had an issue accepting any group of marginalized people. I've never had an issue having to accept gay people. I've never had an issue having to accept light-skinned people, even though I might have, been a bully or joked about it, just, from an oppressed mindset of this light-skinned person has better whatever than I do. And so it begins in you, where it might charge you, it might make you upset, you might want to call someone racist, but just accepting them for who they are, unfortunately, because of their surroundings and their life, and then taking an extra moment to understand. It's going to be hard. I've still struggled with it, but you don't have to do it now. Right now is maybe not the time to do it, because we're on this forward moving train and we're trying to get to a destination. But within, like, if it's right in front of you and in a situation, definitely find it in your heart to be more accepting, as we accept everyone, as all Black Lives Matter right now. It doesn't hurt, to give a little bit more energy and put a little bit more energy into accepting, your parents for thinking differently than you do. That acceptance could
Cedric, I'm
go.
gonna bunt in real quick. I
Absolutely,
want to
please.
jump in real quick. So I think one thing that comes to mind as well is that, you can support the Black Lives Matter movement, but you
Yeah.
can also bring attention to other things that are happening, because
Absolutely.
obviously June is Pride Month, and
Yes.
you can bring attention that the LGBTQ community is oppressed, and you're like, okay, like, trans lives matter, like gay lives matter, all the different things, but you can also still support Black lives as well. Like, it just doesn't
Absolutely.
have to be so cut and dry.
Absolutely.
Like, you can like, you can't, you shouldn't just be a person like, oh, I'm just going to support this one thing and that's all I'm going to do. Like, I
Or
feel that
or
no, go
or
ahead.
ridicule somebody for doing that right now. Don't feel
Right,
like, you
exactly.
need to. Like, we want to stay focused, but like, it's okay to multitask, and we're here for it. And if people feel like they can't, then they draw away and feel like, I maybe I messed up, maybe this just isn't for me, and that's not what we need in forward moving momentum. But we are running low on time. We will jump right back into this very soon in the upcoming week. I did want to take a moment. Black women matter, and say that now. They have been made to feel like, in the Black community, that Black men do not appreciate them. They have been made to feel that the world does not appreciate them and their natural hairstylings and all these other things. I am clearly not and have never been a Black woman, but I have been blessed to have been in the atmosphere of strong Black women. My mom, Terrell, is the strongest Black woman I have ever met. Um, I just say that more recently because I remember she always makes sure like my spirit and my mind is right. And I remember having a conversation with her very recently, and I had no tears left to cry, but she made me cry. And I found it so interesting that like as your child, if your child is crying, like I'm a sympathetic crier, so like if you're crying around me, I'll probably immediately start crying. And so I found it interesting that she didn't have it in her to cry to stay strong for me, and that continued to make her even more stronger. So I do want to plug next week episode, Black Women Matter. We will be talking about Tiana Taylor, um, and we would just be celebrating the Black woman as we take perspectives from somebody I am not, somebody Brandon is not, or pretends to be, despite belief, and somebody Isaiah is not. So we will be having Allison Morris, Amari Brown, and Simone Farmer, as you guys have gotten to know or see in CGTI leadership. And I'm so excited to hear from them and their perspective. Brandon, thank you so much, brother, for your transparency. I understand a little better now. I understand it as you went through what I went through at a different page, at a different, degree turned. And we thank you for that. Isaiah, we're better together, sir.
Yes.
Thank
Actually,
you for
did
your
you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining today. I said last week that our goal in starting this Better Together series was kind of simple on our end, and it was just to start the conversation and to educate and to end racial injustice in our communities. And you guys are all part of that. And I just want to thank you. And to the youth on the call, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge you. Thank you for taking a healthy risk. Thank you for joining a group of primarily adults on this call. But thank you for being here and just being open-minded and being ready to learn more about the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm really, really proud of you. So thank you to you guys for joining, and I wanted to make sure we acknowledge that.
Appreciate y'all for being here.
Yeah, Brandon, Isaiah, Cedric, thank you again for being honest and vulnerable and for sharing. Yes, DeMarco, student. We love you and we appreciate all that you're doing to educate us and make us better together. So.
Before we get off of here, I would like to just grab from last week and set it on this week. Brent, Mr. Swolski, the power of three. How'd that go for you?
I had 3 of my amazing people jump in on the call. And
thank you so much.
Yes. So I know Yami was in there and Julia and Mia. So big shout out to those wonderful people for joining
Absolutely.
in and staying apart.
For those of you guys who have not had a chance to check last week's episode, please do so. Mr. Swolski challenged in call to action that he was going to bring 3 people in this episode and brought them. So I also challenge you guys, as this series grows, I would love to see more faces. I would love to see the faces of your friends. That shows me that you're starting these conversations. And we are going to be better together. You're going to see the number of speakers grow. And I would love to just continue to pack the house. I do want to apologize. Last week, I was taken so off guard by the number of people who showed up. because I was expecting a lot less people to show up. But I'm super grateful for every face and smile here. Zach, thank you for wearing your mask. But I do challenge you guys, if you do accept, bring 3 friends. Let us know that you're starting this conversation and explaining to them, what is happening here. The word groundbreaking has been used, and it feels so great to be surrounded by allies who want to educate themselves, who are putting themselves in a position to be educated, and putting the people around them to also be educated. If you're having issues explaining to your sister, your brother, your cousin, your parents, I challenge you to invite them here. I challenge you to join Orlando Strong if you would like to rewatch this, or get this information to them, or catch up. It is facebook.com/OS movement if you're looking for this information to plug somebody who hasn't seen this episode or the following episode. Riley, is it okay if they reach out to you?
The recording?
Yeah.
Just
I don't want to
email
put that on you. Yeah.
You email Ashley. She'll be able to share links.
Ashley, you go with that?
Yep, I can
But
share it.
we definitely want to move forward, and we want to move forward with you and those that you find to be leaders around you. So let's continue to flex the power of 3 for Mr. Swole, and let's just continue to be better together. Thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you. Really quickly, Cedric, someone had asked about the video that you mentioned in the chat. Riley posted the link. We did want to have a disclosure of the video is
Heavy.
It is really heavy. And so when you watch it, just keep that in mind. There is a little bit of language that we want to be mindful of in case you're watching it around youth. We didn't share it on our pages just because of that. But we did want to at least put it here if it is something you wanted to watch. So the link is in the chat. Make sure you click on it now or copy and paste it, because this will go away once we close the session. So I think that wraps it up. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. I echo everything Cedric and Isaiah and Brandon have said. So thank you guys for joining, and we'll see you next Wednesday, same time, same link. Thank you guys.
Thank you,
everyone.
Don't forget to bring your
Bye.
exercises if
everyone.
you watch the video and you need